Alright. You're right.
Evening, everyone. We'll call to order the March meeting of the Lower Southwood Planning Commission. First order of business, review of the minutes from the February 26th meeting. Any modifications, additions, deletions?
Nope.
I will point out that the minutes from February 26th note that the meeting ended at 8:11. I will be texting John Kennedy. Hearing no changes, a motion to approve as submitted.
You got it. Yep.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. All right, first plan revision, 310 Covenant Lane.
Hello. So I think last month we really didn't have too much to work out. A couple things that we did work out are on the plan. So we now have the two things that we spoke about were Stephanie, the grading for the sidewalk out along Sumney Town Pike, and we did that. And getting a fire hydrant over into the back of the parking lot for the new building. So we have we were working with the fire marshal and North Penn Water Authority to get that accomplished. So we now are showing a fire hydrant over by that existing garage shed. And the water main is coming along the parking lot. It's back in here. This line here is the water main. And then fire hydrant is there. All the comments in the letters are just some cleanup items and they will comply. We talked about the waivers many times, so if you have any other questions, I'll answer them, but.
So we'll comply on the landscape. You saw a couple that
Yep.
you've got to swap out.
Yep.
Either for height or for big too.
Yep.
And then the applicant's requesting to defer the sidewalk. We're gonna go ahead and do the grading now.
Correct.
The applicant understands last time the deferral was until further development. We're now at the point of further development. You're asking to defer it again. This deferral would be until we say we need. So there wouldn't be any triggering event other than it's time.
Absolutely. I mean, the last deferral was 30 years ago and you haven't done anything, so.
Is that the deferral for the bottom part of the property or the whole?
It's the southern town.
But the
So we're
the stretch part?
at the intersection, we are putting sidewalk in.
Yes, at Covenant Lane, they're putting sidewalk in along Sunny
So
Town.
it's just the
Whatever that
field.
corner is, yeah,
Mhm,
correct,
correct.
that's for future.
correct.
But in addition, we asked them to do the grading, like Susan
Yeah.
said, and they are doing the
Yep, that's
grading,
perfect.
so,
That's awesome.
great.
Thank you.
Not to derail the conversation, but we end up putting it at the bottom of the hill or the top of the slope.
Top.
Top, okay.
Look how happy Susan is.
I thought I did. I had a nice phone call with Michelle. I lost.
Good. So everything else is a rule compliant. Questions from members?
No.
Questions from anyone else? Okay, hearing none, a motion for preliminary land development approval. Second, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Very good.
Preliminary final, right?
Yeah, it's preliminary final.
Okay, I thought you just said.
It's listed as preliminary, so I just wanted to be sure.
Gotcha,
that-
preliminary.
Is your review letter
Yeah,
substantial?
it was listed as preliminary, it was submitted as preliminary. And then if you will, and you didn't ask for a waiver, so I just assumed that it was all preliminary. Because you need a waiver.
Right, you did not ask for a waiver.
To the final preliminary, and the plans show preliminary.
I would have no objection if you wanted to make a recommendation for preliminary as final, but this is the third time we reviewed these plans. And they have addressed many of our comments.
I have no issue with that other than the following of the process and whether or not they can request it here versus inviting in advance and
Well, I can change the letter and get it to you before the board,
that's fine.
before it gets to the board.
So we'll approve as preliminary with the recommendation to approve as preliminary final board of supervisors. How's that?
Yeah, you can change the change the motion that was on the floor to preliminary as final, if that's what the planning commission wants. And then the waiver request letter, it would be up for discussion of the waivers potentially at the next board meeting, which is, I believe, 2 weeks from today. No, actually,
No,
it's
next
2 weeks
Wednesday.
next week, right? And so,
I mean, if the members are okay, I don't see the
Yeah.
dragging back in
No,
next
correct.
month just to, so I thought, okay, so revised motion. To preliminary with
It's
the.
just a technicality, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
But I,
I move we
Thank you.
revise our motion to include fine.
Second,
Second again.
thank you, all in favor?
Aye.
Very good,
thank you.
all right,
Sorry.
type that up tomorrow.
Every time I think I got it all figured out.
No worries.
Did it say-
Got it. All right, thank you. 841 Main Street.
Okay. Thanks, Ian. So this, is just a revision to the office building part of, the development. Instead of the office building, they're now proposing, 2 more twin. So another 4 residential buildings, so it's all residential. Didn't really change anything out front, didn't change stormwater management, and we just had some slight adjustments to the parking lot and grading. Everything else stayed the same.
So I looked at the review letter today, the change in the plan does seem minimal, it's really just a change of use and like the single commercial building to attached residential. I think the only thing that I was trying to ascertain from looking at the plan is, if you look at the landscaping plan, it shows a landscaping in front of the parking lot and a bench/wall, but I can't see the architectural plan, so I don't know how, is it a wall or is it a fence, and how tall is the wall?
So that's a good question, but the notes are that wall will provide, and the detail on the design for that wall will be provided with the architectural plans, we don't have them yet.
So I don't
Yeah.
think we usually prefer buffering walls and just the architectural plans, like those are usually on the plan, the land development plan, because you're building that wall, right?
Well, the wall is, it's not gonna be a 6-foot high wall, it's gonna meet your zoning requirements, it's just intended to be, 2 to 4 feet to block the cars in that parking lot, right?
Susan, you and I completely agree.
Okay,
The question becomes, is it 2 feet or is it 4 feet?
It's
So if
about
I
one
just
and a
add
half-
that note
that's
to the
about
plan.
1.5 feet,
That's 2.
yeah,
That's
it's
the
less than 2.
problem. If it's a buffering wall, it should be enough to block most of the view of the cars and the headlights going off.
okay, I meet zoning. Okay,
Which the zoning is just gonna be around the setbacks, the foundations, all.
okay, so we just add the note to the plan, and that's all good.
A note to the plan, to what effect?
To what?
To what effect? How tall will the wall be?
Okay,
Minimum of 3? Can we agree to that?
a minimum of 3, good, yeah,
It would be nice if it was in keeping with the wall that's already out.
Agreed, the wall that's in front of it is in front of a residential building, which wasn't meant to impede the view of the building, but to enhance the view of the building. This is in front of the parking lot, which is meant to kind of buffer the view of the parking lot and the car. So I'm just trying to find, I agree, so if there's somewhat proportional, but this one's a little tall.
That's fine.
That was all I had, other than that, changes weren't substantial in my mind. Anybody else have any questions?
No.
So this was actually approved by us and by the supervisors under a previous agreement. They're just coming back in with the amendment because that one building got changed out to be 2 residential, so. Staff, Mike, if this gets a motion to approve amended plans as.
amended final, yes.
Okay, a motion to that effect.
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, everyone. There's no way we're gonna keep this case up, but.
this, I think this one's gonna pitch off the rails.
Don't call it.
All right, thanks. So. I think we left you last month or 2 months ago, I don't remember anymore, where, with a list of things to get back to you about. So,
Which one's this?
Which one?
Oh,
Christopher Lee, yeah. So we have a letter from Shell and, basically just a few comments that, mostly cleanup items, with the exception of zoning comment number 4, which we need to talk about. We also need to talk, I think, one more time, talk about the 2 additional waivers. We will tell you that we worked through the fire marshal and they're comfortable with everything, no additional fire hydrants, no additional things for that. So we'll go with the fire marshal. And you asked for a rendering of the building. So we have a picture of that for you. And then we can either talk about the waivers first, or I'll let Eric get into comment number 4.
Just an introduction, my name is
Yeah.
Eric Wertz, I'm an attorney at Shell Bartle Dooley and Lansdale, here to represent Argus Properties. I've had some conversations with the township solicitor's office, I know that Susan has also spoken with the township about the concerns that the planning commission had with regard to, I guess, the size of potential tenants in the property. There's 20 units altogether, and there was conversation about how many units can be combined. I went back and I reviewed the minutes from the last meeting. Obviously, I wasn't here, but I also did watch the video online. And frankly, it seemed like the biggest concern was kind of simply the correlation between the size of potential user and then the impact that type of user has. It's always difficult to talk in a vacuum. If we had, you know, a specific user we could present to you and say, this is why you have no reason to be concerned, it'd be a much easier conversation. But we're talking more in the in a vacuum here. But it seemed like the planning commission's biggest concerns had to do with the size of the trucks that could potentially be coming and going if a sizable user came about. To that end, and based on my conversations with the township solicitor's office, we thought that probably what would be most direct in addressing the concerns of the planning commission would be to limit the size of the trucks through notes on the plan, through signs that are posted on the property that say trucks no larger than a certain size are allowed. And that's regardless of whether, you know, there's 20 different users or there's units that are combined by 4 or even more. I have a document here. I'm not sure. Did you already pass this out?
No, but I do.
Oh, I can pass it out. This is something that Susan just put together today. I'll ask you to pass it down. Which shows the circulation of the WD-40 size truck. There's no concerns at all based on that representation that there's plenty of room for it to maneuver. Once we get bigger than that, that's when there's an issue. So frankly, our suggestion after dealing with trying to figure out what the impacts of larger users would be rather than limiting the number of combined units, instead limiting the size of the trucks. So that really seems to directly deal with the concerns of the planning commission. So I guess I'd ask what your thoughts are and see if that addresses your concerns.
how long is a WB-40 truck?
Oh, that's 40 feet.
Well,
I do have,
did you do one for, did you do one for a fire truck or the biggest?
well, I think that's in the
fire
plan
truck
set,
is in
yeah.
there. The
Okay.
fire truck and a box truck. Really, the WB-40 is about the same length as the box truck.
Okay.
But it's just different axles.
Specifically, I mean,
The only concern I had was getting around the back and coming back around the now.
yeah, These are the different sizes. You'll see each one's listed specifically the size. The WB-40 is right there. But the plan set itself contains the box truck, it contains fire trucks, it contains the other size vehicles.
And it definitely will make it around the back.
The WB-40,
No, the fire truck.
Yeah, the fire truck is on the top. The top one, and that does get around the back.
it's kind of hard to see on that representation, it's page 13 of the plan set. But yeah, it shows the fire truck getting all the way around.
Okay,
So just for a visual, WD-40 truck is like a U-Haul truck or a rider truck, a moving truck.
this
Single
looks like a
axle.
tractor trailer. This looks like a tractor trailer.
Tractor trailer.
It's a shorter tractor trailer.
Okay,
So a regular semi, I think is 54, correct?
Yeah.
And then this is the short box,
so
so
it's like.
So the next one up would be a WB-50, and then the next one, the biggest, real big one is the 67. And I think there's even one bigger than that, but the 50 is.
53, 54.
Yeah.
Standard.
Mhm.
So I mean, rather than dealing with kind of the symptom, which is, hey, how many units can we combine? We figured, let's deal with the problem directly and say, this is the maximum size of the truck itself. We'll post it, we'll include it as a note on the plan, and then that'll frankly address the issue better than anything else.
I appreciate the thought of, let's address the symptom, as opposed to the root question, but I think there were several reasons why the root question. One was, if you took down the partitions and you ended up using this as a single or maybe two client facility, you know, we were then trying to make sure we understood, is that still light industrial? Does that become finished manufacturing? What kind of parking do you need? What kind of, you know, deliveries and shipments are gonna go in and out of it? It's one thing to understand it as a, you know, what is it, a 12 tenant, you know, multi-tenant site as opposed to a single unit.
Well, I guess what I would suggest is each time a new applicant's coming into this building or any other building in the township, they make the proper applications to the township and say, this is what we are, this is what we do. And so light industrial is not a function of size, it's a function of the definition of the zoning code, which says, you know, we're not manufacturing parts, we're assembling, that kind of thing. And so it doesn't matter if this is one user in the entire building or 20 individual users. Light industrial is a definition of the zoning code rather than the size.
We're the planning commission. We're gonna keep asking questions around the use to make sure
Sure.
we've got the right access points, delivery points, loading dock. So based on what you're saying, then you wouldn't mind having a note on the plan that said no less than 6 tenants.
Well, we think that this better directs that, and frankly, we'd like to avoid having that note on the plan because it creates a situation where, you know, we're hamstrung in the future. We think that, frankly, we prefer to have 20 individual users. It better suits the applicant's business model. But we'd rather have a direct prevention of the issue that the planning commission, I thought, was concerned about, which is the size of the trucks coming and going.
Well, based on the schematic that you have here, if it's a single tenant, I'm trying to understand how you would be taking, if it's a single tenant, your deliveries are gonna become, you don't have any loading docks here,
Mhm.
right? You just have overhead bay doors that are.
Yeah. Yes, and typically, it would just be handled by box trucks, you know, this is the worst case scenario, the largest type of truck that this site would allow, and so that's why we want to limit it to that. You know, I can appreciate the fact that the planning commission's looking at, you know, all the horror scenarios of the extra long tractor trailers trying to work their way around because they're dealing with a huge concern. That's what we're trying to prevent. We're trying to make sure that's not an issue.
Our job is to plan for the worst scenario and make sure that it
Understood.
still works.
Yeah.
Why don't we also pivot to the architecturals? I'm sure that was meant to make us feel better. You know, I'm on Street View right now. And so I appreciate that you tried to maintain the green, that's nice continuity. All the surrounding buildings have pretty good, you know, some element of windows or something facing the street. This just looks like one big flat wall. Is there anything we can do to break that up to make it consistent with some of the surrounding buildings?
I'm Louis Gilmore, I'm one of the applicants, and we're in the metal building business. We will make a decorative end wall. accent it with a knee wall and some landscaping, so it'll fit in.
The knee wall.
This is, yeah, this is.
Okay. Yeah, so there'll be a different material around the base that'll accent the structure, so it won't look like a big box.
Isn't that what's here?
Yeah,
Yeah.
That's shown.
so he's not suggesting anything different than what's shown.
Windows.
If it's a full wall straight across, that's the design you end up with, you need a lot of landscaping, you need evergreens. In this plan, and it would be better to have a multi-layered landscaping thing going on, taking in the whole front yard there where you don't need sight distances. The sight lines. And like plant the heck out of it. And it needs to be evergreen, because obviously you have these 4 deciduous trees here, and you've got nothing. To bump that.
That's just street trees, but there are also, can you pull up the landscape plan?
This rendering doesn't show. the
It doesn't
parking
show
lot,
all of the trees.
Or the parking lot.
It's, there is no part of that.
Oh, in the front, okay, this is the back wall,
This is the front wall.
Oh.
Front along Christopher.
gotcha.
Yeah. So they are all street trees and deciduous trees out front.
And the plan shows more than what's shown on this elevation.
That's 4 trees. Right, am I doing this wrong? Am I looking at it wrong?
Looks like 4 trees.
And then one other big tree at the street. Are those existing, those other 2?
So there's street trees out there now, and then we're adding a couple more.
It's existing.
And then there's the 4 maples that are right in front of the building between the street and the street trees.
Well, if I transfer that to the elevation, I think we've captured, yeah, I think the elevation captures what's on that plan, so that's what it's doing.
Yeah.
Because there's the 4 trees and there's the added extra one.
There's the added extra one, but that still means looking at a big wall.
I'm not looking at it right. Clearly, I don't have my laptop tonight, but what is the, hold on, the other building? Because I mean, it's all industrial. I'm trying to remember what the other buildings look like.
That good, that good.
The one across the street's got a pretty good buffering with evergreens and deciduous.
There are also
The
different,
one next to
uses.
it's set back even further with parking in the front.
those are more office type uses and not an industrial building type use.
Well, having landscaping in the front of that building won't impede the industrial use of the building.
What?
Having additional landscaping on the streets front of this building won't impede the industrial use of the building, it'll just make it more attractive to the street side, to the street view.
So you're just talking like an evergreen hedgerow or something?
Well,
I would intersperse so that when the trees go to leave, you still have a bunch of evergreens in between to break up so that you're not just looking at that middle end wall. See, almost all those other buildings, if you see, there's windows that break it up, there's a corner suite there element, or maybe it's an entrance. Looks like there are 2nd-story windows as well as differing materials.
But there are also different kinds of uses, that would, you know.
As your client said, it's what goes on inside the building that determines the use, so we agree with that, but we're saying, okay, but what should it look like? I mean, I think what we're trying to do, Susan, is make sure that Christopher Lane looks like a place that people want to have their business in and look good. I mean, we've got a variety of uses there, office, we've got Glick, which is refurbishing fire engines and ambulances. I mean, there's a wide variety of uses, some continuity of look and style. All we're asking you to do is either work to change the building facade or buffer it with some better landscape.
Yeah, I think that's fine. We could come up with something creative. Nice. Yeah, we could do some hedges.
And we'll certainly include some evergreen, which would provide year-round buffer.
Yeah, I think if you just added some berms and some evergreens, I think that's all we're asking you to do, is just help us, you know. It's gotta be a In January, that's gonna be a pretty stark looking facade, that everybody's gonna look at, so how do we break that up? Sure.
We can certainly look at that plan.
Are windows out of the question? Are windows out of the question?
It doesn't really work for the tenants. I think it's gonna provide a security risk and nobody would wanna rent that unit with the big windows.
If you can put fake windows, you can paint something on the side, look like a window.
Yeah, in my business, they call that lipstick on a pig. It's, I'd rather do landscaping that looks nice than jazz up a metal building.
Well, you said it though.
Well,
You got a
let's
pig
say
here.
we can take windows, but you could use, you could. Well, I'm sure you'll have creative ideas, but you could take this building and, section it into thirds and use different. Service. Treatment. There's a lot of things you could do. Without any fake windows.
All right, so what else, anything else on the waiver list?
We added 2 neighbors since we talked. And I think that was just because they weren't part of the prior final plan approval. But we did talk about them. The waiver for curb and sidewalk along all common parking areas. We're asking to not provide sidewalk on the interior of the development, and no curb along the back line. The sidewalk is being provided along Christopher Lane. And the way the building is set up, there's the folks park and then come across the drive aisle to get in, so there's really no need for sidewalk throughout the site. And then the second one has to do with replacement trees.
Except for not doing curbing along the back line, I apologize for cutting you off.
Yeah.
It's water sheeting.
Correct. Correct.
And there's no parking back along that back edge, correct?
Correct.
And that'll be posted. Like you should have signs that say no parking back there.
Okay.
Do that. Yeah. I mean, and that is, so everybody understands. We just looked at a truck configuration that shows the truck going right to the back edge of the property. We
Right.
can't have cars parking along that back edge now.
Yeah, it's good not to have the curb too, because then if worst case scenario, you can still go in the grass. It'll just be torn up.
Okay, and then
Okay,
this,
so understand that sidewalks and no curbing, got it.
and then the second one was for replacement trees. There are 2 I guess heritage trees that you had seen before, but then we were asked to do a calculation of all the trees that were being removed. So we have a replacement tree calculation on the plan, and now I say 75 trees, Michelle calculated 76. So, or 75 or 76 trees that we need to replace. So we're asking for a fee in lieu of that. And we'd just like to say that, we've got 2.6 acres of the 3.6 acres of trees are still being preserved. So more than 70% is being preserved on the site.
Well, how many trees are you, because now you're gonna come back and show us more landscaping on the front, so how much relief are you really gonna need there?
Well, I mean,
I
we
don't know,
need
right, 76
75 trees, so I know if we had,
10.
I mean. How what's the building? It's 100 feet. Yeah, so
You'll need.
maybe
less.
11
Yeah,
trees.
an amount less than 76.
But
But
then there'll
that's
be
a-
evergreens, so we'll need a waiver.
Right. Okay, so the
Okay.
commission is okay with evergreen tree replacements.
So add that to the waiver letter.
The additional evergreens as replacements, not all of them, right?
Right, right.
And then you sold the note that we still need calculate, that you're asking for a waiver, but we still need calculations on the.
Yeah, and I put it on there and it's not on there, so, yeah, I have it here for you. That was smart, yeah. The basin perimeter is 445 lineal feet. So that would require 9 trees and 45 shrubs. We're proposing 6 trees and 10 shrubs. And that's what was on the plan before, that's the waiver we got before. The basin is essentially the same size, it might be slightly bigger, but not major.
I thought there was a modification to the basin, that's why I asked you.
There was a
Yeah,
modification, but it wasn't a huge modification,
Okay,
but there was modification.
so the waiver is exactly the same as before, is that what you're saying, like the length, or did you just recite a new length?
Oh, that's a good question.
what we want to
I don't
check.
know if I had any information on that prior one, yeah.
So
And the
Michelle,
prior one was really kind of funky, so.
it says here that the applicant's proposing 16 shrubs. How much should they be?
That's why we need the calculation,
The 45,
right?
Because not to be a stickler, but a waiver should either be because there's something impeding us for which we need relief, or in order to do so, would just create an excessive deployment of resources that goes beyond anything that benefits the township. But if you propose 16 and her math comes out at 19, then just do 19. Like, there's no hardship there and there's not an excessive deployment of resources. So waivers just shouldn't be, because this is how I want to do it. So I'm just gonna ask you to keep that in mind. If her calculations come out at 35 and you're at 16 and everybody looks at it and says, well, it'd be ridiculous to put 35 shrubs around that, of course, then the waiver is appropriate.
And the solicitor is gonna ask us for that calculation too, just so that it's exact on the waiver. But this is something you mentioned previously, and I'll point it out, is that Mike put up the landscaping plan. And you see there, it would be difficult for her to plant a lot of the trees and required shrubs, because there's that whole back area is already planted.
and that's
See
the
line?
reason
the
the
line.
waiver was granted before. And we planted as much as we could.
And we don't want any trees on that berm. You see the area on the top, someone might say, why don't you put it in the area between the, yeah, thank you, Mike. There, we don't want any trees on a berm because we don't want it to degrade the berm, the root system.
So that's the reason the waiver was granted before. And it was the same thing. I mean, it was a
Yeah, I
huge
just wanted to say it
difference
again
of
today.
things. Yeah.
So you will get us the calculation. You said it.
I will provide it in
Okay,
writing,
could you
sure.
say, yeah, could you tell me it again? I was-
It's 445 lineal feet. It's 9 trees and 45 shrubs.
Okay, 9 trees and 45 shrubs. So in lieu of the 9 trees and 45 shrubs, you are offering 16, you're planting 16 shrubs.
Correct.
Okay,
And 6 trees and 10 shrubs. 6 of the 9 trees,
okay, oh, you're planting,
yeah, and 10 of the 45 shrubs.
gotcha.
Joe, we'll just all look to you to say it's that the right amount.
I think they are adding as much as they can, and I'd be happy to review it again now that I know a number to see if we could put in some more trees or a couple more trees or shrubs.
Yeah, they're never gonna get to 10, 45,
Correct.
but it was 16, they're right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Then dumpster still applies, stone vines. One underneath the Belgian block, it's not doing that. Anything I'm missing, Sue?
I don't think so.
So you're okay with the replacement trees, the additional waiver for the replacement trees, and they'll add as many evergreen trees as they can for the front?
Well, the
Okay.
deciduous trees would be nice in the front also.
Okay, some more, okay.
Yeah, if you look at that landscape plan, I would assume that we're gonna supplement what they're proposing with evergreens to create year-round screening. Just like you have across the street and in other places. Yeah, there's plenty of room to put some small berms and evergreens in there.
And that's what I was gonna say too, going back to what Tori said, make it dimensional. I just don't want a line of, here's 10 pine tree and a line across the front, right?
Anything else?
My guess that a note be put on the plan, say you did, a note be put on the record plan saying no parking in that rear area, put it on the record plan, no. Along with the signage,
We also have to add a note about the loading.
right?
So circling back to, I said, let's move on. Folks okay with the truck circulation, configuration, multi-tenant?
I am.
Did we cover the request for the sidewalks, crosswalks you painted? Am I right?
Oh, you're on the Montgomery County one.
Yeah, I just thought that was a good idea. I didn't know if we covered that already.
We'll show, I hope it's right.
Oh, I have an extra copy.
We did not have a lot of comments, we're very similar to the previous review plan, but we did want to reiterate that. We felt that crosswalk should be painted in this case. I understand that the other properties do not have painted crosswalks, but we feel that it would be a good addition for the benefit of pedestrian safety to have painted crosswalks rather than no paint across the driveway where the sidewalk would be.
There are no stripes, nothing. Yeah. There's a cross. Okay, they are striped. The ramp detail.
Okay, it wasn't on the record plan. That's what.
Did you say you have a problem with that?
No, they're on the plan.
Yeah,
They're on.
I'll make sure it gets on the record.
Okay.
So I think at this point, the only thing we need to resolve is the landscaping, right? Both the detention basin calculation, detention basin perimeter calculation, detention basin plantings, and then the front plantings out front.
Or the facade changes.
They're not gonna
That's
come back
up to
and change how the building's being built, so they're going back with build, go back with the
That's fine.
landscape.
It's not fine, but it's what it is.
And just to reiterate, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but, and we had this discussion last time too. Despite the conversation about potentially one large tenant, the intent is several small tenants, right? That's
That's ideal for our business.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Did we ever talk about what this, so I think we did talk about this last time. You're not gonna have a monument sign depicting the tenants, you're just gonna allow each unit to have a sign at its door, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
We would have a sign in the yard, post sign out front that would say Harleysville Business Center, indicating the property.
Okay.
But not address.
Basically, this one I show here, actually.
Is it all?
Oh, yeah,
It's
on there.
I read it was like.
I just wanted to confirm, like, they're not gonna say, here's my 12 tenants, and
Yeah.
this one's in suite 1, this one's in suite 8.
Right.
Okay. Let's get the landscaping done, I think everyone's there.
So we have to come back. Are we just putting a note on the vehicle, right?
Yeah, so,
Note on the
so just so that we're clear, my understanding is that everybody's okay with the concept of limiting the trucks to the WD 40 and no larger.
Yes.
So we'll just add a note to the plan saying that the signs will be posted in that no trucks longer than that would be allowed.
Yeah, and then it's up to you to inform the tenants, and if at a certain point we're getting complaints, because trucks are having trouble getting in there, the neighbors are citing it, then I'll be in, the zoning law. Okay, yeah, I think we're okay with that, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
Thanks for listening.
All right, 440, 450 Hoffman Road. I see Rick sitting.
You did, and I'll step down. Here it comes.
We're up. Oh, there was one more.
Oh, God, I'll be again.
Good evening, everybody. This is the Ennis subdivision. And Dan and Holly Ennis, Holly's in the middle back there. One of the property owners, Lou Ennis, the handsome one with the hat. Owns the larger parcel, and Colleen Goulart is with us as well.
He's the handsomest of the three. Three males. I mean, he's the most handsome male.
Yeah. So the sum of the plan is really the creation of two additional building lots, which are the two lots on the right-hand side. One's a flag lot with the required 25% increase in setbacks, and the other one is a frontage lot. The existing house that's on lot one, you can move the cursor down and to the left a little bit, like. Well, that's yeah, that house is Louis Ennis's house, and he owns the entire parcel over there. So the plan is to put that on a more minimum lot size, the R1A minimum lot size, and then convey the balance of his property to Dan and Holly Ennis. So presently, the property is in Act 319 preferential assessment. And the goal would be to keep the consolidated parcel, should be the balance of that land, plus the Dan and Holly Ennis property in 319. So that'll still remain an agricultural property. There is public water and sewer out there, so the intent is to tie in the two new lots into both public water and public sewer. The road had been previously improved and curbed. I think in conjunction with the golf course development, it actually is Belgian block curb in that location. And there is existing sidewalk on both sides of the street until you get to this property. And then it continues on the opposite side of the street to the right-hand side of the property. It's really the slimmer property. You can see the property line on the bottom of the plan. From the three reviews that we have, I just want to quickly go through some highlighted items. I'm just interrupting if you have questions. Comment number 3 under zoning. Michelle's recommending a street lamp be placed at the common driveway. And I should have mentioned that there is a common driveway proposed for the two new lots, and once it's passed, there is a dry stream bed, for lack of a better description, that runs across the frontage. Once we're past that, then it would split into two individual lots. So there's a culvert crossing, and then a common drive, and then it splits into two lots, so there'll be only one additional point of access. And the two existing lots also share a common driveway for for those two homes as well. So out of the 4 lots, there'll be 2 driveways, one existing and one proposed. So Michelle's comment is that a street lamp should be, or lamp post, I would say, should be placed at the end of the common drive, which we would agree to.
At this point, we don't intend on putting a light at the end where the existing driveway is. Because it's a fair amount of effort to do that. You would have to feed that from the house and put an electric line all the way through there and through the stream to get to that. So at this point, we would prefer not to put one where the existing driveway is, just the proposed, because there'd be a lot of construction going on there anyway.
We'll pause real quick there. Is that considered a street light?
A lamp post is really, I think, the intent.
And my question, because the golf course is right there. Are there, I think there's street lamps in the golf course, right? On that street?
There is, I believe there's a few,
An intersection?
more of a traditional street light. This is, I'm thinking, more of a driveway lamp post.
Right.
We recently did the Tuttle subdivision on Crestman Road, and that's exactly what we did for those lots, just one lamp post,
Right.
smaller.
But that didn't have existing street lamps on
Did
the
not.
street, right? And that's what I was just thinking from more of a continuity perspective.
It looks like they're about 10 or 12 foot with like a colonial top to it.
There they are.
In the golf course, yeah.
Yeah.
How far away is that from this?
It's like straight next door.
See, that's where I'm thinking more of the continuity,
Oh.
keep it consistent as you're cruising through.
That is what I would consider a street light. We're proposing a lamp post, more of a driveway lamp post.
There's some now, right? Except that it's a little higher.
Yeah, it's looking similar to that, but just lower.
It's okay with that?
I'm still not okay with it.
Not okay with the one light? or-
I would rather have it, if it's similar to this, except for maybe 10 feet shorter or whatever you're saying. Then what would be the effort to make it aesthetically the same and keep the continuity?
It's a completely different
And I was gonna say this, too.
development. basically.
Right, it is a completely different development, but it's a common street. And I was gonna say, and I think it's Mike Michelle's letter, or even maybe Stephanie's, maybe Michelle's, about the potential of the development across the street as well. And there was talks about lining up driveways potentially at some point or whatever, but then you get an intersection, which you would more want a street light at that intersection. A true street light.
One thing I will check is see if there's any pole mounted lights out there already. I'm not sure whether.
Well, that one that Mike just showed was.
Well, no, not the street light.
Oh, on a
Pico.
Pico utility pole light.
Should there might be one.
And overhead street.
No.
Yeah, so those look like there's telephone poles or electric poles going down the
There are.
applicant side of
There are, yeah.
Hoffman. So you could work with that if you want to do pole mounting. And I think, Rick, the concern that everybody has on, I've got a 7-foot lamp post at the bottom of my driveway. I control that with an on-off switch. I don't think that's what Michelle was talking. Michelle wants some sort of a street light or always on, every evening. Some sort of lighting to depict, hey, here's where these driveways are, because you're outside the development.
So I'm viewing this as something to light up the end of the driveway, not light up the neighborhood, in other words,
Agreed.
right?
Yeah,
So
which I think those ones that we're showing you in the development, I don't think those are ambient lights that light up, multiple. Looking
I
at
still
that,
think they
it
should
looks like
be-
they're only at intersections.
road intersections.
Yeah,
not
so where
driveway
like Hoffman
intersections.
meets Championship, there's one there.
Yeah, I mean, my recommendation would be to keep it simple, more of a driveway lamp post, which is lower than those lights, and control it with a photocell or something like that, so it's on during nighttime hours. That would be my
Is
recommendation.
the concern to make it aesthetically similar to what it was coming from, or is it make it the same type of light?
Yes, no, can
No, I'm asking us.
Us, my concern is. There's already a certain level of continuity between the golf course as that street meanders up past this new development. And that continuity is, it has the same Belgian block curbing, it has the same sidewalks on the other side, not on this side. And we're talking about adding 4 homes here, or 3 homes,
Two.
total of 4 homes. Adding 2, but we total 4 homes.
2 are already there, yeah.
And there's potentially a minimum of 3 homes that might be going also across the street,
Right,
potentially. I'm not saying it's happening,
Right, and not on our part.
right.
not on your property, but looking at it from a holistic township perspective. I just think it makes more sense for that continuity, for the support of another neighborhood across the street. Just maintain that.
It's
That's all I'm looking for.
not a huge issue, other than I do think it is a clear transition between a pretty substantial development in the golf course, with a different
Yeah.
type of community, different lots, you know, everything is different there. And you can kind of see, looking that way, you're really transitioning to the rural part of the township, and here it's almost a specific line. You're going from the golf course community to R1A. And you can even see, you know, the farm field in the background, so it's definitely a different look there. Even though the sidewalk continues, it stops at the end of the Solano property. And then after that, it's all pretty low density and really not subdividable any further for the most part.
I know you're a proponent of sidewalks, and Michelle or Claire, did you recommend sidewalks to be built?
We did.
Yeah, I thought you did. So even though the sidewalk ends there, the county is suggesting, let's keep the sidewalks going. Me personally, as part of the commission, I agree with keeping the sidewalks going to get us going up this hill and get us going, ultimately up to Crossroad eventually, if that's what it leads us to.
I guess, do you want a rural development here, or do you want more than a rural development? I still see this as a very rural development, and one of these lots is gonna be almost 11 acres. And then the other 3 are between 2 and 3 acres. So this is a pretty low
Yeah,
density
now it is in that area.
development. And
But then I'm gonna say,
We want people to be able to safely walk past those houses.
well, I was gonna say 20 feet up, not 20 feet, 100 yards up, you get to Sharon Lane.
there's no sidewalk.
And there's no sidewalks there. That's more of a neighborhood feel too, though.
There's actually no sidewalk anywhere
That's what I'm looking.
north of.
No, there isn't. It's on the other side, the other sidewalks outside the quote unquote, the development, the golf course development, or is on Hoffman Road opposite this parcel.
Right.
In front of the undeveloped field across the street.
Right.
Which. Rick, I think some folks have asked questions about when and if that gets developed. You have a sense of how big is that track and what zone?
The one across the street.
Correct.
Yeah, I mean, that's basically 2 or 3 lots.
Those folks
across the
did come in here 2 months ago
You'll see them next month.
with a proposal.
You'll see it next month.
Yeah, last year.
The subdivision,
Per-
yeah, lots.
No more zoning relief, in other words, or?
I think so, I
Yeah,
think. I agree.
You'll see.
He's
next
cut down the
month.
number of units down to 3 units.
$7 million.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's what they were, yeah.
Right.
And that's what I'm talking about. Now you're creating, and you wanna look at my Google Maps here. I don't know, you get in this argument of you're just dead ending sidewalks. And you're trying to create, even though it's a rural feel. The ability. To potentially walk the ladder rock. To minimally, I don't know. Cause now you have this island of sidewalks in the golf course. And you're stuck there. You can't walk to the golf course because nothing connects to it. You can't walk outside the golf course because we aren't extending anything. Just my view.
Where did we end up on the street light?
Well, I think it kind of goes hand in hand with the sidewalks and the continuity and everything. It depends on what we want to do there.
You know, it's a mixed bag. I mean, I'm a
Yeah, I
resident
understand.
too. And I was one of the proponents of walkable letter, making it walkable. I think it's an asset. So I'm in favor of paths and sidewalk in general. In the R1A district, sidewalk on both sides seems out of character with that type of development to me. It's more of an urban look.
I was gonna say, you're probably a half hour from the new townhouses. A half mile from the new townhouses in Little Rock, probably half mile walk.
Can't get there because there's no walkable.
I know.
Walkable.
That doesn't
Rock
mean you
yet.
should not, shouldn't be your goal. Goal should be able to walk to Little Rock. There's some good businesses in Little Rock, you might want to walk to.
I would support sidewalks.
Hey.
Lamppost, street light.
So what's if it's a lamppost, how do we have confidence that it's a, always on evening demarcation point as opposed to,
That would require some level of enforcement to make sure it's done, but we could note it on the record plan, it becomes a recorded plan and, it does require the township to have some level of enforcement to make sure it's done. We'd have to, you have to do a very detailed grading plan and building permit plan set now as well. When the house is built, so that gets transferred from the subdivision plan to that set as well.
And I apologize, do you represent the other lot across the street?
No,
You don't?
I'm not involved with
Okay.
that.
so. Let's, if we could, can we jump to which plan sheet is it that shows the shared driveway on the new lots?
Sure.
So I don't know if everyone had a chance to see this, but the two new lots going in would then share a driveway. I asked, why is it not on the flag pole? So that you just have a nice straight driveway. I think there's some concern about being too close to the adjacent parcel. There is a stream
Yeah,
crossing there. There's some
There's-
wooding.
Couple of reasons, there's right where the cursor is, there's storm sewer in the street. Which would conflict with the driveway access, there's a telephone pole right there. There is somewhat of a channel from the cursor to the stream, right through there. So I wanted to leave all of that untouched, plus there's vegetation in that whole area. Not real nice trees, it's like scrub growth, but it's still vegetation, so I wanted to leave that buffer. And not build right up to the driveway, because we've got to install a culvert. So it seems to make sense from a location standpoint, and then once you get past the stream is where it splits to serve the two lots.
So the reason why I wanted to pivot to that is, in my mind, you cross that stream. And then there's a fork, literally a fork in the road. So if Rick, if we were to go with the lamppost instead of the street light. How about if we put in two lampposts, one at the end of the driveway, one at the fork?
I think that's reasonable. I mean, I would put one on lot 2 and one on lot 3, basically.
You see where I'm kind of going? Yeah. That way, somebody's coming to visit one of those homes, they've never been there before.
They know the splits there.
Right, they cross over the stream area, they hit a fork, and they see the fork, and they know, okay, I've got to go one way. And that also gives you two lamp posts, not two street lights going up, so
Right.
that's more in keeping with the residential scale of the property.
I think that makes sense.
Is it fair to ask, wait till we see this other plan?
Yeah, I'll take it.
Okay, just what I'd ask.
And even that plan is gonna be large lots too. I mean, these are.
I don't
these are
know if
large
it's shared
lots.
driveway, but the original plan was a roadway with houses on it. I don't know if they're gonna do a shared driveway now or what. Yeah,
I would assume just looking at my Google Maps,
right.
in order to get 4 in there, there's gonna be 2 on the road and 2 behind, there's gonna be some sort of.
Flag lots.
1, 2, 3, 4.
I would want to require the homeowners to have a light that automatic goes on at night that's interior to the property. I think they should be able to turn that light off if they want to. a driveway light that's serving as a street light. That you wanna have, that stand, you want people to see where that entrance is, some of people pulling out. Even if it's nothing to do with that, you're not going in there, it's good to see where it is. But I wouldn't want that second. Lamp post to be required to be on all the time. I would think that would be up to the homeowner.
Further to go in. Not just.
I'm just thinking as a homeowner, that would bother me to turn the light off.
But it's a shared driveway, so the home
Yeah.
on the left may say, I don't want it on.
Yeah.
People in the back, people that are leaving 11:30, 12 o'clock at night, they want to be able to see where they're going. Welcome down the shared driveway.
These will be fairly low level lights too, that's
Yeah.
really gonna look at that intersection, it shouldn't be a disturbance to the house that's there.
So if we decided that, just make sure on your record plan, you say which lot is responsible for it.
Yeah, and it'll be on that specific lot too. Just a question, Michelle, comment two, under subdivision and land development, the ultimate right of way must be defined.
I think you show the legal right of way, so just say, I think it's
And
coincident.
they are, yeah, okay, I thought that's what you. Number 7, just for informational purposes, there is an existing cross easement for the shared driveway. I did find it, and we will add that to the plan.
So if we're doing a lamp post instead of a street light, why can't there be a lamp post at the other shared driveway?
It's a lot of work to put in now, to put in that lamp post, because you can't feed it from the street, you have to feed it from the house. So you'd have to run an electric line all the way from the house, down the road, across the stream, and out to the.
From the other lamp.
What's that?
Could you
No,
feed it from the other
well,
lamp?
it can't because it's gonna be the neighbor's electric bill. So you can't feed a lamp post from your neighbor's electric, it's just better, it doesn't make sense.
That's I guess, Scott's my conscience tonight, I suppose. So what I'm thinking about though, Rick, is, across the street is undoubtedly gonna have one, if not two shared driveways. We're gonna call them to do the same thing. The two shared driveways that we just talked about are gonna have it. We're stepping from the intensity of the golf course development. We'll step it down and then it'll get even less as you go further out Hoffman. But now we're gonna have 4 shared driveways, 3 of which are gonna have a light and 1 light. Well,
2 of which are already there.
yeah. I get it. Okay.
I would really prefer not to make that a requirement, that would be the world's most expensive lamp post out there.
I got a ditch witch in where I want.
That's all.
Yeah, but ditch witch. It's good to know. It's good to know.
Number 10, just to point it out, there's a slight angle in the rear line of one of the lots, and Michelle's recommending we get rid of that angle, which that is a little upward. Not even sure why it's there, to be honest.
I was wondering why.
We had a couple of different configurations. I think it was a leftover or something else. Number 14, I don't actually think that's correct. There is not a low intensity buffer required for single family detached
Okay,
development. It's
okay.
only attached and multifamily and non-residential. So I don't believe that's a requirement.
Just out of curiosity, I saw this comment of the 17 red maples and no species can
Yeah.
become more than 40, but is that good?
We're kind of doing it on another development recently too.
If you go over a certain number, it's only 20%.
Yeah.
One additional waiver, and for some reason I didn't think this was a waiver, is that the proposed culvert and all the proposed storms where we want to do with HDPE rather than RCP, these will be privately owned pipes too, and energy capture pipes. So I don't think there's going to be any resistance to doing that, but we'll have to add that to our waivers. And then I wanted to, if you could go back to the sheet 2, I believe it is. Yeah. Sheet 3. I wanted to talk about street trees a little bit, and I've rethought this. In front of the two new lots, so that entire stretch, there's power lines there. That will eventually conflict with those trees. There's a slope where the trees are planted, and then there's a vegetated area right behind those street trees. So I'm thinking it's maybe not the best idea to put those street trees in that location. What we're thinking is maybe moving all those trees around the stream channel in front of the existing farmhouse on Dan and Holly Ennis's lot. Same number of trees. But in that area, and leave the vegetation that's there between Hoffman Road and the stream channel, where the street trees are presently shown, just leave that vegetation alone and plant all those trees in that stream area.
You mean behind the stream? You want to plant it behind the stream,
I think this whole area
right?
in front of that farmhouse, it was all overgrown brush. The brush has been cleared out. There's almost no vegetation there now, so I think that would be a better place to put the trees. Wouldn't have to worry about them conflicting.
Yeah.
Because when I look at the plan and I look at the Google Maps, it looks like you're gonna go in and you're gonna just eradicate the existing buffer, so therefore we've got to replace it with street trees. If you're not, then I agree that we've got posts, we've got existing plantings. Can you do like the overhead? Can you do-
Hold that.
Yeah, so. Hi, Stephanie.
Keeps
God, so just drag us a
It
little
makes
bit.
the recording a lot.
So I think what you're saying is right there is the spot where you've cleaned it out and you'd like to put some of the street trees. Correct?
Yeah, I think all of them.
Well,
Almost.
I think
yeah.
that would look good because it would extend the existing street trees coming out of the golf course development.
And if you look to the left,
Well, that's what I wanted to try to.
well, yeah, we would keep those going,
Yeah,
but then add more behind them too, just to kind of revegetate some of that area.
well, but my question becomes, of the existing that's there. If that's all gonna stay, then I understand, but if that's all gonna get bulldozed, then we need the
No.
street trees to continue up.
None of that's getting bulldozed until you get to the driveway, which is up near where the cursor is. So yeah, everything to the right, we would just leave it the way it is.
Yeah, so
There's
where
no
the-
clear trees. And that, there are some trees that are more substantial in there than the other area too, so that kind of makes sense to me.
And I think there's some trees that, like Manus is talking about, that where you show new trees along an existing line, I think closer to this area here. So you might not be able to put them where you show on the plan, like you're talking about. Mike and I were talking before the meeting, and we were thinking, how do you put in a sidewalk and the street trees where the existing poles are, and we were thinking maybe you move the street trees back to that existing riparian buffer and add to it.
So in that whole area, there's already a pretty decent vegetation density there.
But is it
Here is where
scrub?
there's not. Yeah.
Is it scrub trees rather than street trees and continuing
Well,
the street tree look all the way up?
you can see that there are some bigger trees in that section along the street. So-
Yeah, that other view that Mike had where you're
Yeah.
looking at the street, you could see the size of the trees. Mike,
Yeah.
can you toggle back over that one? Sure.
He's an expert at this.
Yeah. Sure.
It's driveway. That clearing.
Yeah, that, so it'd be hard to put in new trees there. The where it's all been cleared, but if you go further up, where the new.
Where's the existing driveway, did you say?
It's right.
The mailbox.
Okay.
I see.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
But those are gone, right?
those are gone.
Oh, all that got cleared out.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
overhead view, you can see that those are gone. That's where he said they would put in almost all of them.
So we were wondering if you could put the street trees further back along that existing.
You'd actually have to remove trees to do that.
You would?
You would, yeah. You
That
know,
one's
that's what I
pretty
was looking at today, you know, when you look at the power lines, the slope that's there. And where the existing trees are, you really end up taking trees out to put new trees in, it makes sense to put them later.
And I'm cool with that. And now when I see that slope, I understand why the sidewalk would be hard to do, even without street trees there. Because of that.
Yeah, but you don't knock these sidewalks because they're hard to do.
I know, but what I was gonna compromise, depending on how the other, I would say, at least get the sidewalk to that first driveway. Cause then you could walk out of the shared driveway and walk down the sidewalk. To Letty's Pub and have a beer.
He's probably going to be required to do the grading to allow the sidewalk in
At some point.
anyway.
Yeah, okay,
That's what at least that's what the supervisors have been requiring.
okay.
We've, in our last few meetings, we talked about some different sites where we asked them to do the grading for the sidewalk.
Right.
But not put them in further. But in this case, there is an existing sidewalk that we're connecting to.
Right.
So I think we should continue the sidewalk, because you can walk further on the sidewalk, that's enough of a use of the sidewalk. Will it someday end somewhere? Probably. But
Well, you have the opportunity.
there's always the, who knows what the future will bring too.
Right, it just stops
Versus if
there.
I were out for a walk, I'd walk down that sidewalk, and when it ended, I'd cross the street and walk back on the other side.
You could do that here, just do it a couple hundred feet later.
Then you halt, exercise, I think.
So I think maybe, in terms of Michelle's letter, we're down to sidewalk. Probably.
Yeah, I think I was gonna put the conversation back there. I think we've worked through everything else. I personally, in terms of the street trees, I think putting the street trees where you have no vegetation and leaving the existing vegetation to serve as the buffer.
Yep.
Is good common sense. We talked about the light. We won't make you put in the most expensive light post ever. So I think we're back to sidewalk. You know, when I look at the overhead, I see it going from the golf course development, the R1A, all the way out to Cross Road, at which point it gets increasingly rural in terms of the density, but I don't see a lot of developable lots. So I don't know how much more development we would actually see on Hoffman or Sharon Lane. So I personally am okay with the sidewalk just being on the side of Hoffman that it already exists on. If we want it double loaded, I think we're just creating parallel sidewalks to get to the end of that. These two parcels, and then there's no sidewalk and no opportunity to add sidewalk after that. But that's just one man's opinion, so I'm opening up for conversation.
2 minutes, opinion.
Was that
2 minutes.
2 minutes?
In my opinion, would be extended across the whole front property.
Julie, I think that's where you were. So,
Not in my time.
Yeah, I won't die on it either, but that's what I prefer. Because I understand what you're saying too.
Dave, and Bill, your thoughts?
I'd like to see it extended. It looks like it's ready to go.
All right, sounds like majority of members want to see you extended.
I only had one comment for one question for Stephanie. And that is additional information regarding proposed mail delivery. And I wasn't sure what you were looking for.
You're muted.
Stephanie,
you're muted.
I've been quiet the whole night. I think the question is just, and maybe I missed it, is there mailboxes on the plan, like at the end of the driveway for the shared, for the flag lot and the new driveway?
The existing driveway has a mailbox, so we would anticipate that's exactly the treatment of the the new lots, it would be 2 mailboxes at the end of the.
At the end, okay, that's fine. That's fine.
Offset. They may elect not to have delivery too. I mean, there's Letter Rock right around the corner, so.
Sure. Mhm.
In either case, address.
So what, I think that's everything, correct? So I think you just have to come back with a depiction of the sidewalk and what you'd have to do in order to make that elevation work.
Can I ask a question about the sidewalk?
Sure.
Because of the pole line, is there a willingness for some flexibility if the sidewalk isn't strictly? I don't think you're gonna have necessarily just a straight up 4-foot buffer and put the sidewalk in. You're gonna have the poles that will interfere with that. So is there, can they meander it if need be to not impact the utility poles?
I'm seeing heads nod, yes.
Yes, they'll have to do that, yes.
Yeah.
I'd like to add that if you do that, even if you did a different material and did something that was more of a trail, then at least it would serve the same function, but it might fit a little bit better with that rural aesthetic. We're thinking that was a concern. That way it would be a little bit more flexible to fit the context.
Would folks be okay with the trail instead of the sidewalk?
It would still be a sidewalk because I don't think you would be going with the 8-foot width for a trail. So we would, right, you would still be looking for a bituminous sidewalk width versus an 8-foot trail. I believe.
When it's asphalt, it kind of makes more sense if it does meander a little bit, I think. So, rather than a soldier like.
I just want to make sure we're still all on the same page that it would still be a sidewalk width, not a trail width.
Correct.
Okay.
From a material standpoint, that would actually put you consistent with the golf course, the cart path that would be coming to anyway. Okay.
Okay. That's it. Unless you have anything else. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Anything from the county?
No, I have no update, like, I met with Michelle and there, to review the village district, we went through it, and had a few changes, but nothing substantive to bring back to the planning commission.
So what is the timeline?
So we're moving forward and we're making.
Those are motion.
Next month, right? Next month.
Lower than molasses and winter time, but we're anticipating next month to see next month, we have 5 agenda items for development or subdivision. And so we might have to get to it next month. Okay, but it needs to be revised because there were some inconsistencies and some things that just need to be revised because of the board comments. And it's being finalized and being able to place it on an agenda is a challenge. So as soon as possible, it'll be ready for next month to come back in front of you. And basically as a formality, we would ask that the planning commission reconsider their recommendation for approval of the amendments. And then the board will know that that's fresh and accurate, and then move forward for adoption.
So I've heard a couple of times the length of next month's agenda, so can we agree to the following? You'll have it ready for next month. If in the view of staff, the complexity of the 5 that we're reviewing next month means that that's just going to preclude a consideration of that, then it'll be on the May agenda regardless. And after May, we'll be able to review it and push it back out for consideration. So you guys have discretion as to whether or not it's in April, but it'll be ready to go in April. If it doesn't come in April, then we're gonna make sure we talk about it.
We can certainly put it on April and distribute it to the planning commission by email.
Yeah.
And so you can review it prior to the planning commission and you can discuss it briefly with the planning commission, whether or not a more lengthy discussion is required.
Can we make it a red line so we can see what changes from the end result?
Talk about that.
And in that case, if it's going to be seen as a brief discussion, can it be first on the agenda?
Yes.
Yeah, because usually by the time we're done all those things, we're Friday.
As long as it's brief.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, if it's not,
It's
if
longer.
it's longer, we gotta,
Well, I think what Dave's saying, we can look at the red line and say, hey, this is pretty straightforward, great, or hey, there's a bunch of stuff here, we're gonna push this to the bottom of the agenda. If not, we'll clear it out of the way and move on. If not, we'll just push it to the bottom or defer it, you know. Okay, I think that makes sense. Okay. Anything else? County or state? Motion to adjourn.
Anybody in the audience?
Second. Benny, don't put all this. Motion then seconded, thank you, all in favor?
I.
Aye.
Who was the one who was?
I'll make the motion second,
Okay.
or vice versa.
Hey, Scott, you had mentioned wanting to stay